I have been in that cycle where you think like more is better,
right?
More is always better. And so many of our clients think that way.
Your body's in such a stress response, but we've been so conditioned to push harder. But
Right.
I always say the body hangs on to weight when she doesn't feel safe. And if we keep pushing and overstimulating and overwhelming our nervous system, we're going to keep flooding all the adrenaline and cortisol through the body. And that's going to make it feel even harder versus when we start to establish balance and start to trust our bodies and go, rest is just as valuable as the movement, if not more, when I'm in this stressed out state. And when I started to slow down, that's when the weight started to come off. My cortisol finally started to regulate. My other hormones started to regulate, because the cortisol is like the first domino. And if that really starts to go off, it just feels this trifecta of significant imbalance in the body that is going to keep giving you the opposite results that you want.
Welcome back, you guys, to another episode of the Beyond the Scale podcast. I am your host, Katherine. And today's guest, we have Amber, who is an emotional eating, digestive, and hormone expert. She has over 10 years of experience helping high-achieving women create body confidence, intuition, and optimal health through powerful mindset healing, self-care, and overcoming self-sabotage with food. She does this by addressing key negative thoughts, patterns, and limiting beliefs that keep women stuck in the same behaviors for years and decades that they haven't been able to break. Her podcast, the No Sugarcoating Podcast, has over 1 million downloads, over 400 episodes, and is listened to in over 88 different countries. Amber overcame her emotional eating after gaining and losing more than 1,000 pounds and spending over $50,000 on binge foods and spending 5 years balancing her own hormones and digestion. She also dismantled her deep limiting beliefs and behaviors, keeping her stuck in the same looping patterns. Today, she helps others achieve the biggest healing miracles of body freedom so that they have the confidence and health to create amazing lives. So today, you are going to learn about hormone health, proper nutrition and exercise patterns to optimize your hormones, how your mindset can be a catalyst for weight loss, and how we can overcome unhealthy eating habits like binge eating. So welcome, Amber, to the podcast. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to dive in as well. I feel like there's just so much to talk about.
Yes. And we were chatting before the show about how most of our listeners are middle-aged women. They're clients either at Fit Body Bootcamp or other gyms. And we are overwhelmed with the information. We are so overwhelmed. And I know me, even though I'm in this space, I can't tell you how many times, like, I have read an article that says something that is completely the opposite of what I thought. For example, the other day I was reading an article that said women with high cortisol should not be doing early morning workouts. They shouldn't be doing HIIT workouts in the morning. And I think that would be a really good place to start with this conversation today, because at Fit Body Bootcamp, we do strength training, we do cardio days, we do a good mix of everything. But for some women, the morning is the only time we can work out. So what do we do in that situation? And I guess first let's start with why women with high cortisol shouldn't work out first thing in the morning.
Yeah, good question. And I went through this too. And it was actually what was causing me to keep gaining weight. It was throwing my thyroid off. It was giving me low progesterone and high estrogen and flagging me as postmenopausal. So what ends up happening with cortisol, so it's our stress hormone, our adrenal glands produce it. And there's many things that can make our cortisol levels too high, where we can end up in an adrenal fatigue state, or too low, where the adrenals start to go into a burnout state. And so what ends up happening is you have stressors like your schedule is really busy, you're a mom, you're a sister, you have a business, have a career, there's external stressors, and then there's the deep internal stressors like body image struggles, not feeling good enough, you're people pleasing, you're binge eating and then restricting, you're confused about what to eat, you feel disconnected from your body, right? Like there's so many things that could be going on that will overwhelm our bodies with cortisol, caffeine intake, things like that. And so unfortunately, working out in the first thing in the morning is one of the ways we keep feeling this imbalance. I'm just trying to be mindful with my words, because your cortisol is naturally the highest in the morning, even when it's regulated. But when you have high cortisol in the morning and then you wake up early, number one, that's a disruptor. And I know we can't avoid that. A lot of people have to wake up early for different things. But then when we wake up early, have a cup of coffee, which overstimulates the body even more and pushes your cortisol even higher. You have to get ramped up about your workout and you go and do an intense cardio or HIIT training or a long workout for more than, when you have an adrenal issue, more than 30 minutes first thing in the morning is just going to like drain your system. And so when we're doing that, we're just pushing our cortisol levels even higher and pushing us even into even deeper adrenal fatigue. And that's going to give you more exhaustion, more low energy through the day, afternoon energy lulls, more blood sugar crashes, more sensitive low blood sugar, puffiness, retention, easier weight gain, especially in the abdomen, increased cravings, increased appetite levels, increased sugar and carb cravings. And it just can really have a impact on our mood, our fertility, our cycle, so many different things. And so what we need to first look at is how off is your cortisol? Because if it's just a minor imbalance, likely we can make some adjustments with your day, you know, your caffeine consumption, get you on some good adrenal supports, look at your relationship with food and look at the movement and go, okay, maybe say you're going 6 days a week, go down to 3 days a week. And maybe if you can have one of those be like 30 minutes or less, right? And we can do small tweaks with your workouts. But if your cortisol is a severe imbalance and you're in severe adrenal fatigue or burnout, we have to have a serious conversation around if it makes any sense at all for you to do any movement in the morning right now. And that's the hard conversation because we're so conditioned that I have to exercise a certain amount to lose weight and attain it, when the irony is we actually don't need exercise to lose weight and keep it off. We want to use movement for our mental health, our physical health, makes us feel good, the endorphin rush for strength. There's so many benefits to exercise, as we know, but when we're in an adrenal burnout fatigue state, sometimes that need to stay in that intensive routine is just going to make it worse. And I've seen it enough with clients in my own personal experience. And when I started to slow down, that's when the weight started to come off. My cortisol finally started to regulate. My other hormones started to regulate because the cortisol is like the first domino. And if that really starts to go off, it just feels this trifecta of significant imbalance in the body that is going to keep giving you the opposite results that you want.
This is so good. And it has me just like thinking about all the times in my life where I have been in that cycle where you think like more is better,
right?
More is always better. And so many of our clients think that way. Like, I mean, when you tell someone that's trying to lose weight, hey, I want you to go from working out every day to working out 3 days a week, most people say no, like they can't do it because they're so afraid.
Yeah, that's the fear. And that's the limiting beliefs. And that's the unworthiness and the fear of weight gain. And the irony of it is, you know, your body's in such a stress response, but we've been so conditioned to push harder. But I always say the body hangs on to weight when she doesn't feel safe. And if we keep pushing and overstimulating and overwhelming our nervous system, we're going to keep flooding all the adrenaline and cortisol through the body. And that's going to make it feel even harder. And the more pressure we put on, what we resist persists, the more we're fighting with our bodies. Well, the body's going to keep hanging on because you're just pushing her into a deeper stress response. Versus when we start to establish balance and start to trust our bodies and go, rest is just as valuable as the movement, if not more, when I'm in this stressed out state. When we see that everything start to shift, we actually buy into the fact that it is not an all or nothing approach.
Yeah, the all or nothing. I have struggled with that for longer than I can imagine. I mean, longer than I can remember. Excuse me. And which is part of the reason why I got into this industry. You know, like exercise was such a big part of my life. It really was what made me feel the best, and so I wanted to get up and do that every single day. And so there have definitely been times in my life where, especially on the weekends, you know, like you think I'm either going to be really healthy this weekend, I'm going to work out, I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to do it all, or I'm not going to do any of it all. And so many people get stuck in that cycle. And I do find that when you live your life like that for so long, that is what hinders your ability to lose weight and to stay consistent with anything and to keep it off.
Yeah. And you're so right. And I struggle with the all or nothing too. And it's like, if I can't get to the gym and do my workout in the order I want, and if I can't use that elliptical first and then do that exercise, like, F it, why am I even here? I'm just going to go home. Right. And if I don't do the exercise, like you just said, it's a write-off. I'm not going to eat good either. But then if we're literally letting our exercise govern whether or not we're in good habits, there is a missing link between self-love and self-respect and true self-honoring, because whether or not we've gone to the gym or whether or not we've had a mindful indulgence that day shouldn't dictate whether or not we can continue to commit to taking care of our well-being for the rest of the day, week, or month. But because we get so conditioned that it has to be perfect and perfection doesn't exist, as soon as we don't achieve exactly what we want and we're not in full-blown control with that movement, with that food, we have a mindset that I like to call the ego. And it's the limiting part of our mind that's like, well, if you couldn't get your workout in, like, F it, the day is ruined. Oh, you ate that thing, the day is ruined. So now just throw in the towel. And then we go extreme the other way. And if we don't deal with that ego mind and that all or nothing mentality, you will end up with a significant array of hormone issues, binge eating and restriction, and all kinds of things that will be hard to feel like you can overcome until you deal with that.
Yeah. I want to unpack a few other things that you touched on. So first would be, most of our clients that are at the gym, Fit Body Bootcamp, we do 30-minute workouts. And so one of the reasons why everyone loves it so much is because it is only 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it does feel like something that most people can fit into their schedule every day if they want to. And I will say that we do an amazing job with our programming so that we're not overloading our bodies too much. We do have some days where, it's very much more strength focused, where other days may be more, cardio or like a Metcon style workout. So you're not always, doing the same thing. However, if you are, say you're a middle-aged woman, or even me, like I'm in my 30s and I have two young kids, and I've had my cortisol checked and I know it's high, and it's a journey that I'm on right now personally that, it takes time to heal, and there's things that I'm working on. There's things I know I can still do better. But if you're someone who is listening to this and you have high cortisol and you still want to stay consistent with your workout routine, maybe you have to do it in the morning because that's the only time you can do it. What would you recommend to those people? Like, what are some tips or some things that they can do to still stay on that track to healing their body and also still focusing on weight loss?
So I'd actually invite you to take weight loss out of the picture right now, because if you're in adrenal fatigue or burnout state, one of the last things your body wants to do right now is lose weight. And that may upset you and trigger you. But what's more important right now than weight loss is healing your adrenal health, which could be negatively impacting your thyroid, your sex hormones, your stress hormones. It's depleting you of your energy vitamins, your minerals. It could be fueling more sensitive digestion, mood issues, and so many other things. So can I invite you to take your focus off of weight loss and onto a full-blown healing journey where you learn to tend to your mental health, your physical health, and your emotional health? Because as long as we're focused and asphyxiated on weight loss, I often find not a lot's going to change in the body. So it's like, let's focus on, okay, if you're working out 5 or 6 days a week, I really encourage you to go down to 2 or 3. And if that's like you're resistant to that, there's emotional work to do there. Why? You're exhausted. I know after your workout, you're even more exhausted. You're dragging through the day. You're surviving off of caffeine and sugar to give you energy pick-me-ups, and you're crashing, or it's triggering more binge and emotional eating that is frustrating you and you're feeling hard on yourself. So knowing you're exhausted, focusing more on rest is truly the answer. Now, where we get stuck is the follow-through, because we have so much resistance and we have so many limiting beliefs to crush. And so this is where I encourage, get some support to work on your mindset, because that is ultimately what's going to help you make the habitual changes and learn how to trust your body and trust that more isn't always better. So it's my first recommendation that may challenge some people. I think the second thing is, on those rest days, be willing to sleep in through the time that you would have woken up to go for your workout. Optimal hormone balance time happens between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. So even if you're waking up to do the morning workout, if you can get to bed before that time and be asleep before that time, it's going to help you feel more rested and help with the adrenal repair. But what I suggest is, regardless of what time you're waking up in the morning, get up, try to actually, if you can avoid some of the coffee and the caffeine stimulants, it's going to prevent such a high surge of cortisol when you first get up. And if you're like, I need caffeine to give me energy to go and work out, again, this is where I really want you to challenge yourself. Like, is it the right time to keep pushing your body? Because what you need to imagine is you have a glass of water and your glass of water is almost empty. It's on reserve. How do you replenish your cup if you're constantly pushing your body and you're not balancing out with the rest, right? So that's what I like to keep coming back to. So those would be the first things. I think it's extremely important that you get your cortisol tested. Some of you may already have gotten it tested and you know your numbers, but get it tested, because the significant level of cortisol in your body or lack thereof is going to dictate how many days should I rest? What is actually reasonable for me? Do I actually need to take a break for a month or two altogether and focus on rest, napping, especially on the weekends? Like, I had to do this. My cortisol was 2,000. Here in Canada, it should be 350. Okay. I was like, I'm gaining weight. I gained 80 pounds. I wasn't binge eating anymore. I gained 80 pounds because my cortisol was through the roof. It threw me into underactive hypothyroid, gave me estrogen dominance. And when you have this picture going on, weight gain is so easy. Weight loss feels next to impossible. And the more imbalances we have going on in the body, the easier it's going to be for your body to want to hang on and harder to let go. And the more you try to force with eating clean and exercise, I guarantee you, your body is going to resist you and keep gaining, and it's going to drive you insane. So this is where we really need to start getting honest with ourselves about our stress levels. And while movement is a great activity, okay, if your body only recognizes stress as stress, your body can't tell movement as a good stress or a bad stress. It just recognizes it as stress. So the rest, getting your cortisol tested, challenging these limiting beliefs and fears you have around weight gain, I think are all really important. And I think as well, one of the best things we can do before we go to the gym to help assist in waking up our blood sugar, our digestion, and preventing cortisol from going higher is to not go on an empty stomach. You don't have to eat a big meal, but when we go to the gym fasting and then we do a workout, your cortisol is just spiking even more, versus if we can have a little something, even like a half a piece of fruit with like a couple of nuts, or a teaspoon of nut butter and an apple, or some berries and cinnamon. What this is doing, a little smoothie, it's helping give you a bit of energy, and it's helping take you out of that fast mode, and it's helping prevent your cortisol and blood sugar from spiking even higher, because your body's like, she's waking up, she's going to the gym, we haven't eaten, we have nothing, we're already stressed out. Not eating is going to stress the body out in a heightened way that it wouldn't if your cortisol was regulated. I know I'm rambling, but it's so complex. It's not as cut and dry as just being
Right.
like one or two things. And then depending on your results for cortisol is going to dictate what kind of adrenal support should you be taking? What kind of herbs and supplements should you take? What foods, teas, and spices will benefit you? Now, where I don't like to give blanket recommendations on supplements is because if your levels are high, there's certain things that are crucial for high cortisol, certain things that are crucial for low cortisol. But if you don't know and you go on Dr. Google and you're like, oh, I have high cortisol, what supplements should I take? I think this is what's going on. And you by accidentally start taking something like licorice or ginseng, which is specific for lower cortisol, and you're high, it's going to boost your levels higher. And now you're going to potentially be hurting your hormones more. So just that's one example of many, right? So there's so much here.
This is so great. First thing, if someone told me I had to stop exercising for 2 months, I might have a mental breakdown. What was it like when you did that? And talk to us about that journey, because like as someone who has been in this industry for a while, fitness has been a huge part of my life. I can't even tell you the last time I took a week off from exercising. And that's part of my own like, internal work that I would need to do. But I am already thinking to myself, if someone told me I had to take 2 months off, I would gain all this weight, I would lose all this muscle. Talk to us about that. Like, how did you do that?
Yeah, totally. So, and here's the first thing. Ideally, if you're working with someone on this, they shouldn't tell you what to do. They should say, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing. What I suggest is, how do you feel about that?" And then if you're like nervous or you feel really triggered, then it's like working with you to do it in a way that's going to feel somewhat comfortable for you, but you might feel a little uncomfortable. But then if we do your tests again in 3 months and nothing is changing because you've been resistant to slow down, I'm going to say, you know what? Here's the proof. Your body's yelling at you. When are you going to listen? So that's kind of the first step. But for me, I was starting to really immerse myself in healing my hormones and learning a lot about them. And I was exhausted. I had no energy. I had no memory. My brain fog was horrible. I was putting the milk in the cupboard. I was having panic attacks and anxiety throughout the day. So I'm like, honestly, I've gained weight. I've gained 80 pounds. I feel horrible. Like, I'm already, all the things that I don't want to happen are happening. Like, what am I going to lose if I take a break?
Right.
Gain a few more pounds? I don't know. But like, it's like I had this internal like pull to be like, you need to rest. And I was like, I'm going to listen. I'm done resisting. I'm done fighting. I'm going to crush this limiting belief of fear of weight gain if I don't exercise, because I'm exercising and gaining weight. So what do I have to lose? Nothing. So I literally was just to the point where I was so exhausted that it was just like, okay, I'm going to just try it. And so I started to, and I started sleeping better. My afternoon energy levels started improving. My energy drain in the morning stopped because I wasn't working out. My anxiety started to go away. My appetite levels started to regulate. Okay. And then the other thing that I was doing that isn't good if you have high cortisol in the morning is eating a very rich protein, fat breakfast, but no carbs. So I swapped from my eggs or my I don't know, eggs and like veggie breakfast with avocado. And I swapped to oatmeal with fruit and coconut oil and cinnamon and collagen and like very protein and fat rich, but I
Yeah.
needed whole carbohydrates. And it started to give me energy again. And then my clothes started to fit looser. So I lost about 30 pounds within the next 4 or 5 months through resting, meditation, gentle self-care practices, okay, supporting my hormones properly and learning how to love myself and to really trust my body. And what I started to realize is, holy crap, my body has my back. She's not out to get me. The exercise was the tipping point. It was too much. Now, I was an extreme case. Not everyone was as extreme as I was.
Right.
Some of my clients, I'd say 10 to 15%, ideally need a full-blown break for a couple of months, up to 6 months. It depends on the severity of the imbalance. But we talk about that. And if they don't want to, they can keep going. But at some point, they realize the negative impact and they decide to honor the rest.
Yeah.
For, I'd say 30 to 40%, going from 5 or 6 days a week to 2 to 3 days a week, and then gentle yoga, walking, stretching on those off days, and actually resting is doable. And for some, they don't have to change anything. But it depends on the severity of the imbalance. But I'm telling you, when my clients shift these things and really focus on a healing journey instead of a weight loss journey, it's shocking to them that the weight comes off without expending all the effort. And then if they start doing too much movement again, they get puffy, their digestion gets more sensitive, etc. So they start to figure out what works for them. And then as they heal, they can do more again. The last piece is, I think that we haven't been taught how to trust our bodies. We've been just taught that it is about burning more calories and, all of that. I get the need for movement for mental health. It is significant. I know some people that like just feel so much better when they're moving their bodies. And so I think this is where people go, well, what would I do if I couldn't move my body? My mental health would probably decline. And so that's where it's never about you have to stop something and don't figure out what else to do. It's like, okay, whilst we're figuring out what works best for your body right now, there's so many other things you can also add in for your mental health. Have you tried meditating? And here's a few different ways you can start. What about journaling? What about deep breathing and different breathing techniques? What about EFT tapping, which is a great stress release? What about somatic practices like somatic yoga, somatic exercise, somatic shaking, screaming into your pillow? Like there's so many things. It could be a hobby. But one of the reasons we get so asphyxiated with, oh my gosh, I can't imagine slowing down, is because we actually haven't learned any other healthy coping tools or things that can help boost our dopamine and serotonin levels aside from movement. So I think if we have a robust toolkit, if for some reason we have a hormone issue or we get an injury, God forbid, and you have to rest, you surrender to it, right? And then you shift more easily, your hormones regulate more easily. You now feel this profound trust in your body and you see the value of rest and balance, right?
I really am glad that you mentioned somatic yoga, because I was, doing my nightly scrolling the other day, and I came across a page. It was like a very well-known page, and this lady talks about the somatic practice. And so of course I was, going down this rabbit hole, and I purchased her course. And I have yet to get past like the first 3 days because I refuse to use that as my like exercise, because I'm like, oh, I'm not burning any calories. I don't have time to do this for 30 minutes a day. Whereas I'd really love to commit to it. But I will say, like, I know a lot of our listeners will resonate with this. I have gotten so used to, I eat healthy, but I kind of am able to eat the cookie and the ice cream, and I'm able to indulge every now and then because I work out so much.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone was to tell me, hey, you should drop down to 2 to 3 days a week, don't work out so much, then I would have to change my pattern with eating. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I know for many people, they work out a lot because they enjoy eating. They
Yeah.
enjoy not having to worry about everything they put in their mouth. Was that
Yeah.
hard to like wrap your head around when you were like, okay, I'm going to take a break from exercise, so maybe I have to change the way I eat as well?
Yeah, no, not at that point because I'd already healed binge eating. I'd already been through hell and back. I was to the point where I was eating out of my garbage can, and purging and restricting and
Yeah.
trying all the quick fix diets. So the fact that I wasn't binging anymore was a godsend. And
Mm.
so I wasn't worried about my food. And what we have to realize is it's not as simple as just burning more calories and then eating whatever. It's about becoming attuned to our bodies. Because when you're attuned to your body, you can be in full rest mode and eat quite a bit, eat quite a lot, and
Yeah.
not gain weight. Because if you are eating in a way that is providing you with energy, that is nutrient rich, there's so many things that you can make and buy now, even if it's a cookie or a donut or a piece of cake or pizza that is very nutrient rich. And then if
Yeah.
you want to indulge, there's room for that. So the ultimate goal is to get to the place with food where you eat and nourish your body because you love and respect your body. And then you still give yourself permission to enjoy mindful indulgence, whether that's a couple of meals a week or whatever that looks like. If you're on vacation, it's different. But the body doesn't change. So I think we have to get out of like, I have to work out a certain amount to like attain. Here's an example. I sprained my foot in September. So unlike me 12 years ago when I sprained my ankle and didn't rest and kept going to the gym and it took 4 years to heal because I was super stubborn and afraid to gain weight.
Mm.
This time I'm like, no, I have no resistance. I'm sitting my butt down. I am resting. I literally didn't change anything. I kept eating the same amount. I rested, I meditated, I didn't push my body. My foot healed super fast, didn't gain a pound. Okay. Everything stayed the same
Yeah.
because my hormones are regulated, my metabolism's optimal, my thyroid's functioning well. See, this is something a lot of people don't realize. If your thyroid isn't working properly, which is a huge part of your metabolism, that's what we need to work on. Not
Mm.
all of a sudden cutting a bunch of calories or going into restriction. We need to get your thyroid functioning better so your metabolism is revving better. And that doesn't necessarily require movement. That requires proper testing, proper support, making sure your adrenal health is regulated. So we don't have to cut out a bunch of stuff if we rest, but it's about understanding what does my body need and am I fueling my body optimally the way my body wants. Some people thrive off of more fruit. Some people thrive off of like double the fat intake, double the protein intake. Some people need certain starchy carbohydrates or grains, but each person is different. And that's where the information overload gets so overwhelming because we're taught, oh, go keto, go paleo, do this, do that. But we need an individualized approach. And have you asked yourself, like, what do I think my body needs? Do I feel more energy if I have more fat? Do I feel more energy if I add fruits or starchy veggies in with my breakfast in the morning? Like, we need to start asking ourselves more questions.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that because I find that there's so much misinformation out there, and like you'll see someone who wrote a book about it, about intermittent fasting and how every woman should be intermittent fasting. And then you see someone say every woman should wake up and eat 30 grams of protein and then do 30 minutes of, low intensity movement. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, which one is it? Should I wait till noon to eat? Should I eat first thing when I wake up? It's so conflicting. And so I appreciate you saying like every person is different and you do have to listen to your body. And, I worked with a coach about a year and a half ago and they were great. It was great information that I learned about my body through all the blood testing but they recommended so many things that it was just too much for me. Like they
Mm-hmm.
told me to cut out dairy, to cut out certain food groups that at the end of the day, it didn't really make a difference for me. And I'm like, I need to learn how to approach this with like a holistic approach
Mm-hmm.
and really just figure out what works best for me. And yes, this information is great, but you can't always stick to, something like that to a T. And what works for
Mm-hmm.
you isn't going to work for me.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think we need to open up more to that. And we also need to look at who are writing the books. Because if it's a guy writing a book about women's health and hormone health, sorry, you're not a woman.
Right.
You don't live in a woman's body. if I can touch on the fasting thing quick. So what I find with the fasting is if you have like balanced hormones and really good stress levels and you are happy living in your body, you have no unhealthy relationship with food or your body, and you're not trying to lose weight, fasting can be really helpful. But if you have an adrenal issue, fasting is the worst thing you can do. Skipping breakfast is the worst thing you can do.
Thank you for putting that out there.
Stressful on the body.
Everybody, listen to that. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to go to a topic really quick that I hate to talk about. And here's why. I love coffee so much. And you mentioned that you should not, wake up in the morning, drink a bunch of coffee, go do your workout. I get it, but it's so hard. Like, I want to do that every single day. And I know many of our clients, like, they either drink a cup of coffee before or they drink pre-workout, and we're definitely doing it on an empty stomach.
Yeah.
So your recommendation to have a little bit of something to eat before you work out, I understand that, but what should we do if we are addicted to the caffeine? What are your recommendations around that? Should I switch to decaf? Should I just prolong the coffee? What's your recommendation there?
Yeah, ideally don't prolong the coffee, because what you're innocently doing is sabotaging your energy levels and lowering them even more. So again, it's going to depend on the person. For some people, it's going to take some time to like wean off. So you may start with weaning off 1 cup at a time or half a cup at a time, and then doing the other half decaf. You may go to a green tea or a yerba mate or something that is still caffeinated, but a little bit less.
Yeah.
The problem with the caffeine is not only is it the stimulation, but most coffee beans are laden with mold and yeast. And so they're fueling inflammation, they're fueling gut issues, they're suppressing the thyroid because they're inflaming the body. And so part of the reason why people have a withdrawal is not just the caffeine, it is they're having the unhealthy mold and bacteria living within their gut is going through a withdrawal because it's not getting fed. And so you're getting the headaches and the mood drops and the jitteriness and all that stuff because of that detox. And so weaning off slowly may be exactly what you're meant to do. One of my favorite subs, it is caffeine free, but it tastes exactly like coffee. So if you don't have hormone issues and it's like a ritual and you love it, why change it? But if you have the hormone issues, you're gaining weight, you're overstimulated, all these things we're talking about, but you want to keep the ritual, because I love it. I love having a warm drink in the morning. Well, then we want to swap it. Go to a great herbal tea, or what I love is Dandy Blend. It's caffeine free. It tastes like coffee. It's from dandelion root and chicory root. It's instant. You add, like, I love to do it, a teaspoon of it. Don't do more than a tablespoon a day, because if you over detox your liver, you're going to get loose stools. But a teaspoon is perfect. I add a little bit of naked almond milk, or you can add whatever cream, whatever you use. And then I put a little bit of raw honey or monk fruit or whatever to sweeten it a bit. You don't have to add sweetener, but it's so nice. And then I do it iced in the summer. So that is so good because it tastes like coffee. And the other option would be to get rid of the mold, to do bulletproof beans or organic decaf that's been put through the Swiss water method, because then the mold is taken out of it and you're not having that. So many women have mold and fungus issues that are fueling their adrenal fatigue, fueling weight gain, because it's so inflammatory. And the puffier you feel in your body, like tight rings on your fingers, puffiness in your face and your abdomen, like these are signs that there could be fungal infection going on in the body along with the adrenal issues. And then weight loss becomes even harder.
Yeah.
So that's what I suggest. Do it at your pace. If there's resistance, be willing to work through it. Find some healthy swaps. And it's not for forever, right?
Yeah.
But people feel better with less caffeine because your body is supposed to be able to naturally create the energy herself.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned ritual, because that's the problem with me. Like, even when I was pregnant with my 2 kids, like the first thing I thought about was, oh, I can't drink all the coffee that I've been drinking. I mean, I am a sucker for a Starbucks drive-through. It's the experience. I just love it. I love the way it tastes. So I think that, like, I just need to think about ways I can replace or swap it out with other things. Like, I wrote down the dandelion root, the bulletproof, decaf coffee. I should probably give that a try.
Yeah. And there's some really good, I know a company I really love is called Organic Traditions, and they do some really great latte mixes. So they have a ashwagandha hot chocolate, which is nice for the nervous system. They do like a turmeric latte for the holidays. They'll do like a holiday spice and a mint hot chocolate, and they do a pumpkin spice latte in the fall, but very medicinal, right? So you just add your hot water and whatever else you want to, depending on the flavor. But we have a whole cupboard full of amazing warm drinks that we love that are going to support our body. And it's all about balance. And then if it's like, okay, these days I'm going to have coffee, these days I'm going to have this, but having options, because why we feel restricted or resistant is because we think there's nothing else, tunnel vision. And it's like, no, there's so many other things. Let me try them and see what I like.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I've been into Element. I don't know if
Oh,
you've
yeah.
tried any of they have like a chocolate raspberry flavor and then like a chai tea. It is very salty, but it is good warm.
Yeah.
So I've had that a few times. But yeah, it's definitely that ritual. And I know a lot of people struggle with that. It's like, you want to go through the Starbucks drive through after you drop your kids off from school. It's just a part of your routine and
Right.
getting the venti latte. Like there are other things that we can replace that with and still feel that sense of joy that that cup of coffee provides
Yeah,
us.
exactly.
Oh, this is so good. So, the last thing I really want to touch on is binge eating, because this is kind of going back to where we started with that all or nothing mentality. And so many people struggle with it, whether they classify it as binge eating or not. Even me personally, I mean, our niece is a Girl Scout and we bought a bunch of Girl Scout cookies. And one night I just was like, oh, I'm going to go have a few. And two turned into six and eight. And then you
Mm-hmm.
feel terrible
Mm-hmm.
afterwards. And I do think it all goes back to that mindset. You start with that, okay, I'm just going to have one, but if I already had one, I might as well have 10.
Mm-hmm.
What really triggers that? Like, why do we do that?
How long do we have left for me to answer that question? Yeah, I hear you. It is. And so I think there's many things that can fuel that. So I'll try to be concise. So depending on how we were raised, right? If you were denied treats and sweets
Mm,
growing up, you're going to probably go into rebellion mode and go grab stuff and eat in your closet and hide, and all the
yep,
wrappers are going to be there. And that can start fueling binge eating. If you were put on diets and restricted or made fun of or bullied for your weight as a child, that could push you into a diet restriction mentality. And then what happens when we can't attain perfection? The all or nothing gets triggered and we end up binging, emotionally eating, and food, going into food rebellion, eating all the things we weren't allowing ourselves to have. And that's my beef with the diet industry. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. They want you as a lifetime customer. They give you all these food rules, restrictions. They make you afraid of whole foods. And it's hard to attain their external calorie counting and using their apps and stuff, which actually don't help you become in tune with your body. And then
right.
because you don't trust your body, you go from restriction, failing with restriction and perfection, and going, F it, I had a bad day, I'm going to go eat whatever I want. So all these mentalities fuel the all or nothing, and we go completely out of control with food. Now, why do we go from, oh, I'll just have one and then eat 10? Well, part of it is we associate the cookie or whatever the food is that's bad. And so,
Mm,
oh, I had that, I messed up. So what's the point? I might as well free for all and I'll try again tomorrow or Monday. So
yep.
we need to shift our verbiage. Okay. Food, there's some foods that are more optimal and some foods that aren't. However, power of choice. I'm going to choose to eat what I want. I'm going to have a mindful indulgence and see if I can keep it mindful. But the problem is a lot of people can't just have a mindful indulgence because the ingredients in the food you're consuming are drug-like and giving your brain a drug-like reaction. They're giving you a massive dopamine high, just like a drug. Refined sugar is 10 times more addictive than cocaine. It just is. The research is out there. The food industry knows. That's why they're a multi-trillion-dollar a year industry. And they are in bed with big pharma and they love feeding off of each other because if you get into it enough, you eventually get sick, you need pharma. And hello, it makes the food industry a ton of money. There's literally labs in the United States where they measure the pleasure point. And their whole point is to test food and add certain ingredients into the food for you to get the perfect high. So refined sugar, MSG, which is a appetite enhancer and
Right.
increases the appetite as well. Aspartame spikes the blood sugar more than sugar. Okay, when all of these ingredients and a lot more are put into our food, including the Girl Scout cookies, you're getting such a massive rush of dopamine, that feel good neurotransmitter, that we just want to keep in that feeling. And once we start having that reward, feeling that dopamine high, it's extremely hard to stop because you're having a big high, you're having a sugar spike, you're having an energy spike. Nothing else matters in that moment. But then that negative voice I was talking about earlier kicks in and goes, you've messed up, blah, 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 guilt, guilt, shame, shame, like eat more, like this is it, like get rid of it, get it out of the house, eat it all so it's gone. And then we do that and we feel guilty, we feel shame, we feel embarrassed, all the negative emotions. We get so hard on ourselves. And then we panic and then we go, oh my God, I've got to do double the workout tomorrow. I have to skip breakfast tomorrow. And then we start getting into really unhealthy behaviors. And this is where I'm going to tell you, if you are using exercise to compensate for binge and emotional eating, your movement is no longer healthy. And now you're using it as a punishment. So this is where we really want to work on healing our relationship with food and making sure our relationship with exercise is actually healthy. Because if you feel guilty skipping workouts, you need to work out to compensate for overeating or eating too much. That is not mindful. That's mindless. Okay. So this is where we come back deep into there's so much going on internally with unworthiness, not feeling good enough, the need to look a certain way, weigh a certain amount. We have to work on all that emotionally. But the food, the way the food is designed gives us a massive high. And that's one of the reasons that it feels so hard to stop. Not to mention that most women, 90% of the female population struggles with some form of eating disorder or body image issues or both. Okay. Feels unworthy. And we're using food to cope, to numb, to shove down our emotions. We don't feel safe feeling. There's so much going on. You have so much on your plate and it feels like the only break you have. So there's so much with binge eating, but the first things are to start identifying what triggers you to binge, because how do you change it if you don't know? Right. To understand what foods you're vulnerable to. And it doesn't mean you don't ever have them, but it's understanding if I'm vulnerable to this and I've already had a stressful day, does it make sense for me to sit down and start eating this, or am I going to lose control? So as you're hearing, there's a whole conversation and a whole rabbit hole just with binge eating, not to mention how it impacts your hormones, feeds unhealthy gut bacteria. That makes you crave more sugar and increases your appetite levels. So there's physical, energetic, and emotional triggers that are just fueling the urge to lose control. That's why it feels so hard to stop. It's not you. It's not because you don't have willpower. It's not because you need to do better on your diet. It's because there is a series of internal beliefs, behaviors, emotions, brain chemistry that are all in a reactive state when we do this. And if we don't know how to deal with that, how do you change it? And that's what I work with women on a daily. And I didn't know any of that until I healed it myself. So I get it. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. And I think that's so impactful that you have been on this journey yourself. So it's like you understand and you can relate to all of your clients, whereas you're not just speaking about some research that you did or a course that you took. It's like you've learned all of this the hard way and you know what worked for you and what didn't. And you can speak to your experience using exercise as punishment. I do believe that every woman is guilty of that, whether they're really thinking about it or not. We have all done that.
Yeah.
And I would say that it's easier to just use exercise as punishment and feel like, okay, I'm going to punish myself by working out extra hard this week because I overdid it this past weekend. It's easier to do that than to actually, sit with the thought of what could really be going on underneath the surface.
Yeah, it is.
It's hard.
Yeah, because we've been taught it's, uncomfortable to feel. We're afraid to feel. We've been told to be strong, right? Yes. As women, that you can't express your emotion or be vulnerable, that it's weak to feel. And all of that is BS. We're meant to feel, but we've been put into such a quick fix society where it's like distract with your phone and Netflix. Just go work out more. Go on a diet to fix it. Overbook your schedule. Keep running away from all your problems. But unfortunately, if we stay in that pattern, at some point, something is going to come and nip us in the butt. And you don't want that. You don't want to end up manifesting some kind of illness or dis-ease because you're so not at ease, right? You don't want your binge eating and chronic diet, weight loss, weight gain, emotional roller coaster to fuel insulin resistance, diabetes, push you into a cancer diagnosis, high estrogen. Like all of this can be avoided and prevented if we start baby stepping, keyword baby stepping, into starting to deal with our stuff and face it, having healthy ways to cope that aren't food, starting to feel our emotions, having healthy ways to release and process through, right? Understanding what physical versus emotional hunger feels like. And if I'm emotionally hungry, I'm not going to hurt my body with food, right? Yeah. So there's so much to look at, but it is the willingness to do so that will completely transform your life. Then you don't have to ever worry about needing to try and latch onto a diet or a certain plan ever again. You'll move mindfully the way your body loves it, and you'll rest when you want to. You'll indulge mindfully when you feel you want to, and that will be it. And then otherwise you're treating your body like a temple out of respect and love. And that's how we ideally should all treat our bodies. And we should be at peace with food in our bodies, but we're not because of all the mindset stuff, right?
Well, and I think too, most women, if we look in the mirror and there's something that we don't like, how could we be at peace with our body? How could we be, present in our body and know that we don't have to work out and we don't have to live by anybody's rules when it comes to diet and nutrition. And, if you look in the mirror and you say, well, I want to lose 50 pounds and I don't like the way my stomach looks in these jeans and I don't like the way I look in a bathing suit, it's hard to be at peace with that. It's really hard. And so I
Yeah.
think like for any of our listeners that, you can, I'm sure many people can relate to that. You're not alone. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is not something that anybody can avoid.
Yeah. But I think what I invite the listeners to consider is instead of continuing to like diet and restrict and keep doing the superficial quick fixes,
Mhm.
take a step back, look at yourself in the mirror and get curious and go, why are my jeans fitting so much tighter? Why have I gained 50 pounds? If weight is a protective mechanism and my body is putting it on because she doesn't feel safe, whether I'm overworking her, I'm over exercising, I'm binging and restricting, I'm overbooked, I have had trauma in my past I haven't dealt with. I have loads of negative self talk. Maybe there's hormone and gut issues I need to look at. Let me get curious. Why do I think my body is hanging on? Because if
Yeah.
I can actually get curious, I stop that reaction and that negative self talk that isn't doing you any good. And I actually start thinking in a different way, which is okay. Like, actually, you know what? The binge eating probably is a reason. The
Mhm.
skipping breakfast and waiting until 4 p.m. to eat is probably a reason. Staying up until 1 a.m. every morning, binge watching Netflix and only getting 4 hours of sleep is probably a reason. I'm only drinking a cup of water a day. And we start to go, wow, there's actually a lot of things that I'm by accidentally doing that are contributing to this. But if
Yeah.
we don't know what our weight loss blocks are, right, then it can feel very frustrating. So I encourage you to go into curiosity. Why do I feel I'm hanging on? And if you don't know, get help, get support. Stop just going on another diet and quick fix. Actually work with someone who can help you identify these blocks on a physical, mental, and emotional level. I have clients, they'll stop binge eating, they'll balance their hormones in the gut. They don't lose the weight. Why? Because there's deep inner emotional work to do. You have to learn to love yourself and accept yourself while you're healing and losing the weight, not after you lose weight. And that's hard. And I learned to love myself at that peak weight. I was like 190 pounds. And I'm like, well, everything else in my life is amazing. I'm not binging anymore. I'm going to learn how to be kinder to myself. I know at some point it will come off. This isn't my natural set point, but I'm done fighting with my body. I put my body through hell and back. I'm done with it. And it
Yeah.
didn't just happen overnight. It was years of reprogramming my mind and the repetition of affirmations and catching negative self talk. It was not so cut and dry. But then one day I felt that acceptance feeling. And it was around the same time that I stopped working out and took the rest. And I swear to you, that's when it just all started to fall off effortlessly. And
Mm.
age doesn't matter. I have clients 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, same things are happening because they're doing the physical and the emotional work.
Yeah. I want to ask you one last question because we're about to run out of time, but I'm very curious and I know our listeners are going to be too. So you lost the weight, but how did you exercise today, right? Like you,
Not currently. Long
okay.
story short, I'm in adrenal fatigue again because of a noisy neighbor, lack of sleep for 6 months experience. So I haven't been doing movement for probably 7 or 8 months.
Okay, I was going to ask, like, how would someone reintroduce movement at a safe pace once they have kind of cured their adrenal fatigue and their cortisol and gotten
Mm-hmm.
their relationship with themselves when they've gotten that to a good place where they
Yeah.
feel like, okay, I can start doing this again?
Yeah. So I think just easing yourself in. So maybe you start with, that 2 or 3 days a week. And the key is you really tune into how you feel after your movement. Does your energy significantly drop off? Or do you feel like things stay pretty stable?
Yeah,
Right? How does your mood feel? How is your mental clarity? Does your body stay calm or does she start puffing up and swelling up? Right?
yeah,
So start to tune into how your body feels after the movement. And if it's feeling good, maybe slowly add in like a strength training in a week or a little bit more cardio. You'll know what feels good for your body. And then I still suggest taking that week where you have a more of a rest period every, 6 to 8 weeks,
yeah,
right? Or if you haven't been sleeping good, take more rest time. But your body will tell you if what you're doing is enough or if she wants a bit more. But let your body tell you rather than like that ego mind that's like, you need to do
yeah,
this because this person on Instagram is doing it. It's like, no, what does my body feel like? And maybe today you're like, holy crap, I have so much energy. I'm gonna go crush it and do like a HIIT workout and it feels amazing. But it's tuning into what I need, not from a place of I need to lose weight, I'm not good enough, but like what feels good. And that's a mastery to get to that place.
Well, Amber, this has been so insightful for just me personally. And I know the audience is going to get so much value from this episode. She posts great content, you guys. So you have to go follow her. I love all of her stuff. So tell our listeners where they can find you and learn more about what you're doing.
Yeah. And thank you for having me. And like, after I started talking about the exercise stuff, I'm like, I hope she doesn't hang up because I'm like talking about slowing down movement. Some people get really mad at me. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't want to lie.
I actually think this is what we all need because we just always think more is better. And I know for me, like I know after doing this for long enough that I know sometimes when I need to slow down, but it's hard to coach yourself through that.
Totally. Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate you. So you can find me at my website, amberprove.ca. If you're wondering if you're struggling with binge or emotional eating, I have a free quiz you can take and it'll give you more insight and some podcast resources to kind of help open you up. I also have a 30-minute complimentary body freedom consultation. So if you want to connect and you're feeling what we're talking about today and you want to explore some support to help with any of the things, binge eating, hormones, weight loss, etc., I'm happy to talk to you about that. And then the podcast, which is the No Sugarcoating podcast, is available on all podcast apps and the website as well. And I'm on Instagram. My handle is Amber Romaniuk, and same with YouTube. So it's ROMANIUK.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amber. This was great.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us for another episode of the Beyond the Scale podcast. As always, make sure to check us out on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and share this episode with all of your friends. Until next time, you guys, thanks so much.